hottest off-road races on the National Championship calendar. The Mmabatho Sun 500 has over the years earned the reputation for being an event that is hard on competitors, with heat, dust, thorn bushes, rocks and dongas, just a few of the obstacles which make life difficult. With precious championship points once again at stake, Special Vehicle Class leader Bucks Carolyn was anticipating a tough ride.
There's only 20 points in us at the moment, and hopefully I can pull it off, but it's close. And Richard did very well in the desert race, so he's the boy, and Klaus is going well. Harry's got his new car here. I think it's going to be a tough race. The trucks are going, so it's going to be a different race altogether, and we hope we can pull it off.
Bike star Hilton Haywood had his tactics mapped out.
I say I don't try to win every race, I'd rather just keep right there with the guys and pick up points in that way. And in the long run, it actually helps you. Instead of just breaking a bike and losing points, you can actually keep there and just keep in the championship. And that's the way I'm leading.
Former national champion Wilfried Wesslau was also full of confidence.
Our biggest rival Peter Boomfai, is close on our heels, but I don't give him good chances. His car is not as competitive as ours.
Errol Dalton was expecting a tough time.
My class is Willie Island on the 300, Gary Peterson on the 300. It's mainly Gary Peterson I'm worried about.
Johan Petersen also fancied his chances.
I think we stand a very good chance here, and in Mmabatho we always do well. So we're hoping that that will be the same this year.
Safety first was Brian Buntekoning's approach.
Considering I've got such a nice lead in the championship, I'm going to try and ride safe, rather finishing the points and win the championship than try and win everything or perhaps throw it away,
The short 58-kilometre casino section on the opening day, with Mmabatho Sun General Manager Hans Bremer acting as starter, is used to determine the starting order for the race proper. First away were Arpi Reinecker and Lucas Dreyer in the trusty BP Nissan Safari. Former off-road and rally champions Hannes Grobler and Piet Swanepoel in the new turbocharged Nissan were among the favourites, but were to be plagued by a succession of punctures that saw them eventually run out of tyres. The event was also to provide Philip Milan and Richard Leake in the turbocharged Toyota Hilux with a succession of problems. Like many of their fellow competitors, Milan and Leake also had a battle on their hands when it came to finding the correct route. The four-wheel and two-wheel brigades often found themselves heading in the wrong direction, and this cost them valuable time. Alfred van Vuren and Piet Pelser have dominated Class 5 in their Toyota Hilux for the last 2 seasons, and we're once again up with the front runners. The standard bakkie battle in Class 1 has been a constant contest between the Isuzu of Louis Kruger and Barcy Venter and the Toyota Hilux of Jan van Wyk and Louis Pryber. The van Wyk-Pryber combination currently leads the championship. Kruger and Venter ran into problems when they tried an alternative route through a dry river bed. The end result saw the Isuzu parked in a ditch. Pete Pitter and Tony Salvage were going well in their Toyota Hilux and were leading the Class 3 pack. In Class 4, it was the Toyota of Kobus van der Berg and Koos Sutherland which held the upper hand. As expected, former national champions Wilfried Wesslau and Dagmar Blankner from Lesotho were out in front in Class 2 in the Windhoek Breweries VW. Louis Kruger and Barcy Venter were still battling to get the Isuzu out of the ditch and back into the race. Glenn and Steve Parker also needed a helping hand, but there were no problems for Class 7 leaders Dave and Brett Gurney in the Isuzu Mutant. The Natal Earthworks Race Co, in the hands of Bucks Carolyn and Kenny Skolthammer, was among the pre-race favourites in Class 8. With a motor suffering from wet electrics, Carolyn and Skolthammer were under pressure from Richard Schilling and Fred Levesque in the Motortech Chenoweth. spectacular Klaus Degener, with Jeff Bell navigating, was also going well in Class 8 in the Duckham's Chenoweth. For others, it was not such a smooth ride, but veteran Harry Roscoe was never in trouble as he took over the Class 9 lead and set the fastest time of the day. Another veteran off-road racer, Jack Spencer, was chasing Roscoe in Class 9 in the aging Duckham Sandmaster. Greg Wiebel held the upper hand in Class 10 despite the odd moment of indecision over the route. The House-Berger combination chose a novel method of getting across a dry riverbed. The idea may have been good, but the end result wasn't quite what they wanted. Still recovering from a bad ankle injury, Willie Ireland led the charge of the bike brigade in the 500 class on the Super Tyres KTM. Messrs Goos and Berger were still pondering a tricky situation. A little muscle power came to the rescue, and they were back in action. A flying Errol Dalton was well placed in the 500 class on the Bird Paradise KTM. Former motocross star Gary Peterson, a hamburger fanatic, was hot on his heels. In the 250 class, Jeremy Davies was thoroughly enjoying himself and throwing the lubrication equipment KTM around with gay abandon. Then there is the not-to-be-recommended method of crossing water splashes. Many of the bike competitors were still in nappies when Joe van Altena started racing motorcycles, but the old warhorse led the 200 class. The water splash did not provide Van Altena with any problems, but there were others not so experienced in these matters. Before the start of racing section 2, Harry Roscoe was worried.
Well, if it's well marked, I think I've got a reasonable chance. If it's not well marked, then I've got problems. These guys will be up my exhaust pipe in no time at all.
Roscoe was first man away the following day with 440 bruising kilometres ahead of drivers and navigators. Roscoe was followed by the Bell-Degener combination, with Robin Yates third in his first outing in a single seat of the season. After 140 kilometres, Degener and Bell had stormed into the lead. They were being chased by Bucks Carolyn and Kenny Skoltheimer, who had moved up from 5th place overnight. The ever-consistent Arpi Reinecker and Lucas Dreyer had moved into 3rd place in the Nissan Safari, with Reinecker trying to emulate his father and brother by winning the Mmabatho 500. A tremendous performance saw Alfred van Vuren and Piet Pelser up in 4th place, but a penalty for missing the last marshal control was to ultimately drop them back to 19th place. Robin Yates was 6th in the Durex Raceco on loan from Richard Carolyn and leading Class 9. The Class 2 favourites, Wilfried Westlau and Dagmar Blankner, were ahead of arch-rival Wolf-Peter Pumfai, but were later to run into problems. Johan and Ferdi Pieterse were having a steady run in the Orco to lead Class 10. Kobus van der Berg and Koos Sutherland have made Class 4 their own this season and were on the way to another comfortable win. Brake problems saw Richard Schilling and Fred Levesque drop out of the top 15. Glenn and Steve Parker were looking good in Class 7, but were also later to hit problems, while Jan van Beek and Louis Pryber were again in control in Class 1. Off-roaders are an intrepid bunch, and after extricating the Isuzu from its ditch the previous day, Louis Kruger and Barcy Venter were back in action. Back at the start, the bikers were preparing for their race. Willie Ireland led them away, followed by Gary Peterson and Errol Dalton. There are those who think the bikers are a real crazy bunch of guys. Belting through the bush with a throttle wide open is not everyone's idea of a gentle day in the countryside. Conditions were tough and riders and machines took a hammering, with Ireland setting a hot pace. Now settling into off-road racing, Gary Peterson was the next up and looking good on the Truck Africa KTM. As was to be expected, Jeremy Davies soon started to work his way into a challenging position. Errol Dalton and Natal star Alfie Cox were also going well, with Daryl Curtis leading the 200 pack. After the midway refuel, Klaus Degener and Jeff Bell were still in the lead, but were later to be delayed by a broken distributor cap. Almost unnoticed, John Lambert and Roy Field had moved into second spot, but then retired with a burnt-out clutch. Arpi Reinecker and Lucas Dreyer were again a model of consistency in the BP Nissan Safari, with veteran Jack Spencer also starting to make his move in the Duckham Sandmaster. Robert Walk was running in second place in Class 9 in his Super Pave Sandmaster, but was later also forced into retirement. The Class 2 battle went the way of Peter Fumfai and Jan van Beekeren when Wilfried Veslau and Dagmar Blankner hit suspension problems. Piet Putter and Tony Salvage were on their way to a Class 3 win after a steady drive. Willie Ireland's race ended when he ran out of petrol in the middle of nowhere and he hitched a lift on the TV helicopter. Back on land, Jeremy Davies had moved into the lead and wasted no time at a fuel stop. The nuggety Alfie Cox had moved into second place and was chasing fellow Springbok Davies. Cox's protective clothing was torn to shreds by thorns, and all the bikers put up with plenty of pain. Errol Dalton was having a good run on the Bird Paradise Kawasaki. He was in third place overall and leading the 500 class. Matters had not been going too well for Hilton Hayward. He was back in 9th place overall and was lying 5th in the 250 class. The bikers had to put up with some really tough sections. John Hodgson had moved his way through the field and was now ahead of Joe van Altena and Daryl Curtis in the 200 class. Back on four wheels, Arpi Reinecker and Lucas Dreyer had taken over the lead in the BP Nissan Safari. Overnight leader Harry Roscoe had run into all sorts of problems, and Reinecker and Dreyer were now locked in battle with Jack Spencer's Sandmaster. American Rick Scalzo and Nardis Alberts in the Robin Yates-owned Durex Race Co. ran into early problems, but were busy working their way towards a top 5 finish. There was a bonus for Bill Angus and Derek Weatherall, who took Class 5 after Alfred van Vuren had been penalised. On the bike front, Jeremy Davies was going like the clappers and looked to have victory in the bag. But hard on his heels was Alfie Cox, who had not given up. The unfortunate Harry Roscoe was still soldiering on after a string of mechanical hitches. He then stalled at an intersection that provided competitors with plenty of headaches as they tried to figure out which route the organisers wanted them to follow. While Errol Dalton zipped past on his way to 4th overall, Roscoe then turned contortionist as he tried to top up the brake fluid reservoir. John Hodgson was still leading the 200 class, with a veteran, Joe van Altena, clinging on to second place in a great ride for a man who won't see 50 again. Brian Bontekoning had slipped back to 3rd place in the 200 class and was trying desperately to catch van Altena. In a grandstand finish, Arpi Reinecker and Lucas Dreyer, with the BP Nissan Safari now reduced to front-wheel drive following prop shaft problems, held off Jack Spencer by just 5 seconds. It was a great finish to over 400 kilometers of racing.
And behind him, Jackie.
Dit is, ek dink die 12de Mmabatho event wat nou gehou is van die jaar. En van die 12 het in ons familie nou 5 keer gewen. 2 keer vir my pa van tevore en 2 keer my broer met Lucas. So dit is Lucas se 3de Mmabatho wat hy nou wen en my eerste ene.
With just 2 championship events remaining, all the class winners grab points, which could make all the difference when it comes to the final tally-up.
And it seems
A flying Jeremy Davies had built up an 8-minute lead over Alfie Cox and was a popular winner of the motorcycle section on the lubrication equipment KTM. When a tattered and torn Cox put in his appearance, he did it in style.
I had a smooth run the whole day. I didn't fall, and I just was consistent, and it all came together today.
There were some battered and bruised class winners, with all and sundry now trying to recuperate for the ultra-tough starless Mmabatho Sun Roof of Africa rally from 11 to 13 October.